you start doing your first spec, or like you start wanting to actually build for yourself, and then you realize that you can't actually output that good of a project because you just don't have the connections yet.
So the main thing here that I feel like that we have to do in terms of steps is first, not before you even get to the numbers, you have to understand what the scope of the project is and not just be hit blindsided by this like flashy number of like, for example, $2,500 that we're talking about. Like that is a large sum of money when we actually talk about it.
Yeah.
But when we talk about clients and everything like that, like video production is expensive.
This is why freelancing is the hardest thing, because there's this roller coaster of emotion. Because when you're at your lowest and you're down or whatever it is, you haven't done projects in a while, any form of number that gets sprinkled in front of you is like I need that.
One, when you're at that stage, you got eyes on everything, and it's hard to trust people.
Yeah.
Right? It's very hard to trust people with stuff. It's just like, I need to have eyes on everything, right?
Being more competent and doing things more often, you get the evidence in yourself of like, oh wait, I actually can do this.
Yeah.
And that's what builds this confidence level that actually pushes you forward in the future. And so, but the confidence only happens when you just do stuff so many times that there's no guesswork anymore. So 4 years ago, tenfold production, we were selling projects for that $500 to $2,500 range, and we couldn't push past that. And today we're working on $100,000 plus campaigns. We're working with big brands and agencies that we never thought we would actually get to. Most filmmakers are talented, but they lack the simple skills of business and understanding how to get to that next stage. They undervalue themselves, they undercharge, and they really just hope for that next opportunity to show up. Today, we're going to show you guys also exactly how to get past that stage, to control your own life and find those clients to actually get you to that next stage. And so these are going to be the 10 lessons that we're going to teach you guys today. If you stick with us for the next hour, we promise you there's going to be some things in here that are going to change your life and hopefully save you a few years of struggle that we went through. So let's dive right into it.
Let's get into it.
So lesson number 1 is learn how to get good fast through spec work. So I think in the beginning too, the biggest thing that kills a lot of filmmakers' journeys is like perfectionism.
Yeah.
What do you feel about that?
I can relate fully, because when you see a piece of work of like, I want to create campaigns like that. I want to, as a cinematographer, production company director, whatever you see is like, I need to create something like that. And then what people don't see is the work, the amount of people, the money behind those things. And it seems so far. So once you start creating work of your own, you're going to really focus on the minor details of everything, of like, why isn't it perfect? Why isn't it like everything I imagined about these 6-figure campaigns that I've seen, right? And then I can relate this to a lot, because when I started out and I was just starting to make spec work and everything, I didn't really get caught up on the details, because I was just like, this is the best I can do at the moment. I always talk about this, especially as a cinematographer. If you're leveling up as a business or anything, you have to work with what you have. This is all you can do with that. And then you have to level up in some way or another. This could be obviously your gear, but mainly the people you're working with, as well as how you're going to execute those ideas. So I feel like getting caught up in the nitty gritty, especially when you're first starting, is like one of the worst things that you can do. It's more about volume and output at that point, and just like kind of putting in the reps.
Yeah. I think like the first, like everything up till $2,500, and I like to use the number range because it's almost like very clean numbers, where everything before that, it is, like you said, an output and numbers game. And everyone gets so excited. Like you start doing your first spec, or like you start wanting to actually build for yourself. And then you realize that you can't actually output that good of a project because you just don't have the connections yet. Because like that could be one thing. Secondary, you don't have the crew yet, or you don't have the, honestly, sometimes the base foundation of like the technical skills either. Because I think in the beginning of all of our spec projects, once we started working with a colorist, we got super excited because we're like, oh man, you can save anything.
Yeah.
But you actually can't save bad lighting and like the talent that doesn't perform well because I don't direct them properly. You know what I mean? Like there's actually more skills than that. And so you actually are capped on just being able to like go past that stage. And then you realize at a certain point, you need to stop. Like this project is at its max.
Yeah.
And then the more time you spend on that, the faster it slows you down. And so I think, even as we go through this with like some of our students as well, it's like everyone always has, or they come into it with like a really big idea. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's about also scaling things back and going simpler and having a stronger final project that you're excited about, that you finish, versus it being like, I have to spend an extra year. Cause like, it's always about that practice to like how much time can you practice in between someone doing a project in a year, right? I could do 10 projects in the time someone takes to do one. Who's going to learn more, who's going to grow faster? Obviously that person with like that does 10 projects.
Obviously in the right way, you have to take
Yeah.
that in a grain of salt. And the biggest thing that you said there is like knowing when to stop. And I feel like that's a big thing to get caught up, especially when you're making your first spec project or spec projects in general, because right now, you and I as a business, or me and you as a cinematography and director combo, we know when a project is actually maxed out to the limit where we can't take it further.
Yeah.
And then we're like, yeah, there's no point in pouring more money into this, more effort into this, because we already took 95% there. The extra 5, 10, or even 20% at some points is not really worth it sometimes, right?
Yeah.
You have to really think about it as not an exponential curve. I'm going to talk a little scientific here, not an exponential curve, but a log curve. So basically it goes off like this and then it plateaus.
Yeah.
Right. And the more effort that you put on your X scale, it's just going to plateau. And then you're just going to end up wasting more time and effort.
Yeah. This kind of follows the whole 80-20 rule as well.
Yeah.
Right. It's like 80% of there is pretty good. Like the last 20%, you're just going to be fighting yourself. And then you kind of lose up on opportunities to put that stuff out there, which is kind of the biggest thing, right? It's like a lot of people get to 80%, they finish a project, and then they're like, it's not good enough. And then you're like, why did you just waste all that time then?
It's not good enough, then do better on the next one.
Yeah, there's always a next one. And so I think this also leads into the next concept, which is not putting it on a pedestal, right? Like I think we had this ongoing joke in the beginning when we first like started working together. I kept saying the words like on to the next one, right? Because whatever project we finished, we were kind of over it, right? I'm sure a lot of people experience that too. It's like you spend the last 6 months on a project and you're like, I am so over this.
Yeah.
Let me move on to the next one and then go from there, because I need to just take what I need to take from that, the skills and like the learnings from it, apply it to the next one. And then hopefully that one's better because you can streamline it, you can make it a little bit cleaner. But yeah, it is really getting over that perfectionism and realizing that you guys changing one, frame over, like you're not at that place yet where that affects it that much. And, a lot of people, this actually leads into the project side of things. Like for client campaigns and smaller projects, they spend so much time on client work that should just be client work.
Yeah.
And then they never get to go to the actual good work because they just burn themselves out. And so it really is finding a way to flip this whole script, which is you get to spend more time on the stuff that you care about, get it to a place that's at least good for you. And I know some people are just so hard on themselves. So to them, it's like, it's never good. But really there's a point where like, you just weren't good enough and it's okay. And you just move on. But yeah, once you guys get over that skill, I think you're going to really start to see a lot more growth in yourself and giving yourself the grace to be like, I know I suck right now. That is totally fine. Like the whole purpose of life is to practice and try different things and to get to that next stage. So that's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2 is mastering reverse engineering as your core skill. And so I'm sure both of us have a lot of experience in this and we have a lot of things to talk about, but let me know your thoughts on reverse engineering.
Reverse engineering, I feel when it comes to not just filmmaking or businesses or really anything, is one of the most important skills that you can learn, because obviously I come from an engineering background and literally there is a part of a course where it's all about reverse engineering. And ultimately when we kind of describe that is like looking at what is successful in whatever you're doing, breaking it down, figuring out how they did it, and now applying those same things to what you can do. And this, if you can master the skill and figure this out, how you do it in your own process, it will put you well ahead. And a big mistake and a pitfall that people fall into, which we've fallen into a lot of times, is reverse engineering something and then copying it and not really putting it in your own voice. So don't do that. Really just focus on how you can apply it to your own work. And I feel like we can talk about this a lot. So like, what's your take on reverse engineering and how do you apply it for the stuff that you do?
Yeah, you brought up a good point in the beginning. When you don't know anything and you start to reverse engineer and you see a path and you're like, that's it, that's the only path. As creatives too, you also fall into the trap sometimes of thinking that you need to be original on everything. And I think that's actually the thing that in the beginning, when you like, I have to be original to separate myself.
Ideas, cinematography, everything has to be original. Yeah.
Like if I'm not original, no one's going to care. And I think people kind of mistake that and they go so deep into just trying whatever without realizing that there are formats and patterns and things that work consistently. like there's like a 3-part story structure for a reason. You don't just do an intro and an outro because like where's any of the climax or like tension that's built up. All these little things, and this is something that you start to realize when it comes to commercial work or documentary work. If you go into blind with something, it's just you are making stuff up as you go, and then suddenly you're like, why isn't this working? And it's because you have to just see what has worked in the past, right? Like what is good, what makes sense, why did they do that? Because they've, you got to think about the people that are 10, 15, 20 steps ahead of you. They have gone through these steps so many times, and they have tweaked this to a place where, the project gets landed. They work with the best teams. They have built these systems for themselves over time. And why would you start from scratch and not try to do any of the things that the right people are doing?
Yeah.
And so everything that we do in our life, whether it is cinematography, directing, running a production company, how we brand, everything is based off of some form of basis out there. Maybe it's a combination of like 4, 5, 7 different things, doesn't matter. But it's not like you need to pull everything from one source. We typically look at a wide range of things, and we narrow down to the things that we personally enjoy. And that's based off of our life experiences, all these things that are unique to us. And I think that's where you get your own tone. That's where you get your own style.
Your own voice.
And your own voice and your own variation of things, right? And so regardless of how things map out in the future, when you start doing work, all of our work was some form of mixed variation of all these things that we saw out there. Even if it comes into you subconsciously or you consciously decide to put that into a commercial or whatever, when we start to see other people integrate stuff that we've shot before very clearly, we actually kind of love it because we're like, we're only here because we did the exact same thing in our version of it. And so there's like a level of like flattery at every level, and that's part of the game, right? And so like when people see us, putting in different inspirations that came from other people, I hope they see it as a flattery moment as well, because it's like your stuff was good enough that it actually inspired me to like move in a specific direction in my work. Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people are on one side or not when it comes to this topic, because a lot of people are like, oh no, that's stealing, or like can get really in that aspect of it. Or there's the other side where it's just like, oh, they drew inspiration from this and did it there in their own way. And I feel like it's really easy to get caught up into the negative side of things of like, oh, they just copied this. But if you really look at things and break things down, like work, music, everything is resampled, recycled so many
music
times.
Specifically.
Yeah, if you like, oh, that's a fire beat, I'm like, no, it's sampled from this. And then if you even go back and then they sampled from somewhere else and they've sampled, right? Obviously, it's a totally different thing in terms of that, but it should be used as a tool of flattery as well as bringing your own voice and spin on things in terms of what you draw inspiration of. And I feel like a lot of people mature in any industry can see that. But when you're starting out, just don't straight copy. You have to draw inspiration from it. And I feel like that's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Even in life right now too, as I start to pick up golf, this is a good metaphor of like, I'm trying to emulate what I do based off of what the pros do.
Yeah.
And I'm not reverse engineering off of other people that are like shanking the ball. You know what I mean? Like, or having a bad time.
You're looking
on the
at
course.
The professionals, the people who are good.
Yeah, you're trying to get to the best, and you're not gonna go and be like, I'm gonna go follow my buddy. Sure, if that's the only kind of like external, inputs that you have, sure, that maybe that's all you see as golf, right? But then golf is one of the hardest things because it's not intuitive, and I don't think filmmaking or commercial work is necessarily intuitive as well.
No,
because there's so many little pieces that you have to put together and quirks, and then it's like you have to find your own way there, right? Like the way that we operate is very different from like standard operations of like production companies, but like we've kind of molded it into our style. And down the line, there's going to be people that see Tenfold production and be like, I want some variation of that. I don't want to go the standard like repping a director route. Like maybe go something different, right? And so at the end of the day, guys, it's about like finding some form of path for yourself. It is just finding things that you're pulling inspiration from, whether it's your life experiences, all these little things, meshing it all together. But once you kind of learn this skill, you realize it's in every part of your day, because you're always trying to optimize to be and do the best version of stuff.
Reverse engineering is optimization.
Yeah.
Simple as it, right? Yeah. And I feel like that's a good place to end it and move on to the next one.
Yeah. So lesson number 3, everyone, is transforming yourself to attract the clients that you want. So let's dive into that.
This is a big one, especially me myself talking as like a cinematographer with a heavy editing background. And I remember when I first wanted to get into this industry, I didn't even know what a cinematographer was. I didn't know what this whole thing was. I just enjoyed the process. And then when I saw you guys, Justin and you specifically working, that's the work I wanted to create, right? That's the stuff I wanted to do. But my stuff really didn't look like that, right? So I'm like, how do I get to start doing that, what they are doing, the storytelling, this visualization of emotions and everything like that you were known for at that time. And then I just had a connection moment of like, I need just to start creating work to get to that, right? And I feel like this goes in waves of what you're trying to figure out in terms of your voice, and it won't be something that's constant. I started off with like videography work, heavy VFX, graphics, and everything like that, and that's what I was known for. And then I went into shooting cars for a period of time. That's a long story. And then everybody knew me as a car guy. And then when I started working with you guys and started creating more intentional work and everything like that, people started to see my work as a cinematographer. You know what I mean? So this is just a broad work in terms of just transferring in terms of cinematography. But this heavily plays into the voice as well as work that you want to get hired for. Say for myself, I am a commercial cinematographer. That's all I post on my personal brand page or whatever. And then as well as that's what I talk with Tenfold Production on the YouTube channel. You're not going to come to me, somebody who wants to get into film and narrative work specifically, and like, oh, Zachary's the guy. No, I'm not the guy at all. And no one's going to hire me for a film either. Everybody's just going to hire me for what I put out there, which is commercial work.
Yeah. I think this is like a bigger picture of like your branding and like how you position yourself in all this. And it leads further down into like how you position yourself out of like lower end work in that $2,500 range. Because in the beginning too, a lot of people and you know, other businesses or whoever's hiring you kind of see you often as like a doer, right? And not as like a strategic partner to actually build this idea out from. And so you got to think about, why do people see me like that, right? Is it because when they look at my portfolio or my website that they only see that I'm capable of X amount of work, right? And so they position you and they bucket everyone into different categories. And so it worked completely different. Like for you as a perfect example, when I first met Zach, I saw him do like a breakdown on his Instagram about a car rig that he created. And in my mind, I instantly pocketed him into car guy, but also very comfortable in front of camera.
Okay.
And so in my mind, I had already slotted secretly Zach into leading the YouTube channel down the line years later. But again, this is the whole idea of like the positioning thing. And then it's like how you saw me and Justin was this facade that we had built based off of like, we have an FX9 now. People think we're sick, you know, it's or we're doing this like speed in our spec work. It's like back then we didn't know we were making a branding or positioning ourselves in a certain way. We were just creating for the sake of creating. But it's interesting to see that, you know, naturally this stuff happens regardless of what you do in life. Someone's going to position you into a bucket.
100%.
And then it's your job to decide whether you want to stay in that bucket or move out of that.
Yeah, because I feel like the most important thing, the way that you describe that, is like, say if I'm approaching you and I know nothing about you, the only thing that I have available is your Instagram, your website, or whatever you put out work into the world.
Yeah, even the words you say. All these
everything. I'm going to look at that, and then I'm going to get a first opinion off you automatically, right? So when it comes to me, I feel like I have a lot of different faces, a lot of different places, because when you look at my Instagram, it's just like only commercial cinematography, and then obviously my personal life, but like not much about education. But that's something I would love to get into, because everybody on Instagram just knows me as a director of photography. And then there's this whole separate YouTube community that I feel like knows a lot more about me personally, because I feel like I share a lot more of myself because I'm comfortable, right? Because I am a creative problem solver that loves to geek out about 3D printing and how we can apply that to the filmmaking world. I'm even making videos about more products that we got in that are related to that whole manufacturing and engineering side. And then the people from there know that. Anybody who watches a video knows that I'm about education as well as cinematography. But everybody on Instagram is just like, he just shoots.
Yeah, yeah. This
Right?
is
Obviously, there's a few mix over in terms of what spills over into what. But now, if we apply the same thing to your work, it's the exact same thing.
yeah, your work, your branding, who you are, how
Yeah.
people see you. It is kind of the whole thing too. And eventually you have to get to this place where who you were before needs to transition over into this new place. And so even for us too, we used to have kind of like this recurring client that would come to us all the time, and they would pay us $2,500 or whatever. And again, this is when we were starting to like, hey, we really need to push into this commercial world.
Yeah.
It's something that like, us as a team, we really wanted to strive for. And yes, they were paying us, but at the same time, we knew we needed to stop with working with this client to get to this new place. And there's going to be these moments in your career where it feels like I need to make a step and a decision to actually get to that next place. And it happens all the time.
And that decision is going to be very hard.
It's very hard. And having those conversations are oftentimes quite awkward for yourself, obviously, in the first times around. But eventually you realize like you need to make these hard decisions to actually get to that next place.
Yeah.
And whether that's a client side or deciding that we need to rebrand or spending money on things that like you're kind of taking a leap of faith on, like those are often the moments that actually propel you way further. Because if we were still doing that $2,500 client to this day, we would definitely not be here. We would not be doing the projects that we were wanting to do. We'd be burnt out creatively, and we would just feel like we were capped all the time. And so again, it's obviously quite a broad topic, but when it comes to how you want to position yourself, brand yourself in the future, guys, it is just having a constant conversation and awareness of like, where do I want to be? How do I get there? How do I make these right decisions? Can I make this decision earlier so that it snowballs into momentum and then growing into a space that you want to be in? Yeah. So
100%.
I think that's a really big lesson. But lesson number 4 is build systems that scale before you need them. So what are your thoughts on this, Zach?
I feel like that's something we learned late.
Yes.
But just talking about that topic is like you want a bulletproof system for everything that you do that can work in scale. And I feel like that we preach this a lot now, especially when it just comes to pre-production naturally. Even now, when I look back at the past and the projects that we did, and if I had that pre-production system, the pre-production playbook, I'd be like, oh,
there's no guesswork.
There's no guesswork. This is great, right? And I feel like now when we look at everything, we need to bulletproof it for any scale of project.
Yeah.
Right? When we talk about even talking heads or a simple thing that we can just show up, right? The main reason why we wanted to break down this 6-figure project is to tell you why pre-production is so important. And this is the one thing that has changed my career as a cinematographer and mainly us as a production company. The pre-production playbook is my entire process as a cinematographer, from director alignment all the way the day before your shoot and every step in between. I don't really hide anything. This is everything that I do on the projects that I do today now for Tenfold, as well as anybody else. So I would love to invite you guys to check out in the link in the description below, get the pre-production playbook today. If you have a system that is built out for a giant commercial where a lot of people are depending on me versus a talking head that I can just show up, it just eliminates everything. And it's the same system that is applied throughout the entire thing. Sure, you're going to skip steps at scale, right? But I feel that it just eliminates all the guesswork and then you not feeling confident in situations. And then that's when it starts to show in terms of being a team leader or whatever you're doing in that instance.
Yeah. As we grew in the beginning, I think there's something that we figured out a lot later, which is that you grow technically a lot faster.
Yeah.
Like all the technical skills as a filmmaker, I'm sure all of you guys do. Imagine when you just first picked up your camera. You're like, I'm going to learn everything as possible. Like
I'm going to take
one.
2 days to learn the system of the camera.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't do that because I sucked for so long and I was shooting like the wrong FPS, all these things. But otherwise, in most cases, you're already researching all this stuff beforehand.
Yep.
You pick up a camera, you learn these editing skills, VFX, CGI, whatever this stuff is. And you so quickly get over those skills. And now the thing that hasn't caught up is your business systems, how you scale a team, how you actually work on projects, how you intake projects, all these things that actually grow you and grow your business faster, not so much the technical skills. Mm-hmm. And so as much as it is, you guys are always going to find this, which is you can do projects. Like that's always the easiest part for us, right? Yeah. And not in like some braggy way. It's like we've done the system so many more times, but the thing that we lacked on for so long was like, how do we deal with our finances better? Like, how do we actually look at a project and map this out so we're making better profit margins? Like the stuff that we needed to actually dive into, and like the things that we almost like, shied away from a little bit.
Yeah.
Those are the things that always fell through. And one of the biggest things that really happened to us, maybe a few years ago, was you were shooting the YouTube videos, and this is kind of when we started to get into YouTube. And at the same time, you were editing them, and then you were creating the ideas. You were doing everything pretty much full scale.
Yeah.
And then you were also taking on projects at the same time.
Yeah.
And so,
and no time.
and a lot of people don't realize that systems can be anything, right? It's like the system here was that you were fully blocked, and whenever a project came in, YouTube would die.
Yeah.
Right? Completely. And then we're like, okay, cool, but we can't stop YouTube. So like, what is the solution here? And the easiest solution in that case was finding an editor, because you were, naturally, Zach being the person he is, he's like, I shot this, I can just edit it quick because he's a fast editor. He knows what he's doing. And like, that was just like the constant
Crutch.
it was the crux that you just kept saying all the time. And I'm like, okay, wait, let me just find you someone. And then even if the first like iteration of the editor wasn't great, by the third or fourth version, we were like, oh wait, this might work.
Yeah.
And then suddenly this like cloud that was over your shoulders disappeared. And it meant that we can do more, we can execute more, we can do projects and YouTube at the same time. And that was one of the first like systems that we keep repeating to ourselves of like, remember that time, because it wasn't a good time, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people fall into this trap, whether not on the YouTube side necessarily, but in all their like kind of like filmmaking systems.
Oh yeah. And then what we did in that is we analyzed what is the biggest time suck here and what can we pass off.
Yeah.
Obviously creative ideation and me recording the videos, you can't really pass off of that at that scale, but the editing is, you could just hand it to an editor. Right.
Yeah.
And that was obviously the biggest time suck. And I feel like editing, when it comes to production, everybody gets caught up in like, oh, post is easy. I shot it. I can just do it. And I've been here so many times, but post probably takes 5 times, 10 times longer than the actual production. And then more work comes in, then you're like, no, I'm still editing this. And it's just like blah, 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 back and forth, back and forth. Our system now is we barely take anything in-house anymore.
Yeah.
Just because we need to optimize what the system is or production. And that's the influx of cash flow, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, you got to spend money to make money. If
Yeah.
we can take on more projects so we can, pay out this editing, then it just makes sense. And then having that system that like, no, we don't edit.
Yeah. Now, if we think about it more in the early stages of trying to get past $2,500.
Yeah.
And you're just like a videographer, you're trying to get into this next scale. What is usually the biggest crux you would say that moves you from like, okay, I can actually do more projects now versus getting stuck in that stage?
I feel like there's 2 things. One, when you're at that stage, you got eyes on everything, and it's hard to trust people.
Yeah.
Right? It's very hard to trust people with stuff. It's just like, I need to have eyes on everything, right? So you have to look on things that aren't as not necessarily big picture, but really important, relevant to the project to break through in terms of getting past that $2,500 budget or whatever we're talking about, that can alleviate that stress that you don't really necessarily need.
Yeah.
Right? And that's just like hiring people, networking with people, so you can get more work. And then also you can just offload those small tasks, or even just have hands on set, like we said about even having an editor that you can work with. And the biggest thing that you said is the first time it's not going to be a pleasant necessarily experience.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get frustrated and be like, oh, I could have done a better job. But if you think back when you first started as an editor and you got your own footage, it wasn't the greatest, and then now you've evolved in terms of you figured out what works and what doesn't work. The same thing that you're going to have to do once you start systemizing things and you start hiring out for people, because you just have to like nurture that relationship, and that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, this is actually a very broad topic
Yeah.
that we talk to all of our students with. It's kind of like you have to give stuff time.
Yep.
Right? A lot of people want to find the perfect editor on their first shot. Again, Zach wasn't even shooting with us for like the first year. No. He was just gaffing. And same thing for us. Like we were still discovering ourselves and finding our path and everything. But for a lot of people that start to expand themselves and start to work with new people, it is the most necessary thing you'll ever do in your careers. Because if you stay solo and you still keep doing stuff by yourself, you're never gonna get past that stage. It's impossible.
You're gonna stay solo.
Yeah, like our first specs weren't great. Like we just figured stuff out and we just made small tweaks and adjustments, similar to some of the lessons we were talking about earlier. But over time, we figured out how to work with each other. It took a while, and it was fun because we were just bickering all the time.
Yeah.
But it was also the small things of like, okay, why are we doing everything from scratch every single time we do a project? Can we just get like a template that's like our shot list template that we just fill out and make better every single time, optimize that? Cool, we're done that. Let's move on to the next thing. And so a lot of these times when you're kind of getting over these stages, the thing that's going to get you past that stage is, again, like you said, finding new people that you can work with, because other people have better jobs sometimes and they bring that into your system. So you have more opportunities to try and do more work. And they also get to share more resources with people too. So like you naturally get to get better faster. And then ultimately at the end of the day, it's like you just need to do more work. And then you got to keep thinking backwards, right? So I want to do more work and more spec work. What's currently holding me back? This is the question that we ask through everything we do, whether it's launching new courses, our programs, or campaigns that come through. It's like, what is currently holding me back? And then how do we alleviate that as fast as possible?
Of course.
And Zach hears me ask this all the time to him specifically. He's like, what are you doing? And what's like too much on your plate right now? Because we need to get rid of that so you can focus on whatever. And this is a skill that took us a long time to figure out.
Yeah.
Because we would just be like, I can handle it.
I can do it.
Yeah. And the thing is, you just can't. And then what happens is it snowballs. You get mad at yourself because you're like, I should have passed this off earlier.
And then you just have a bad attitude towards other people because then you're just working and you're overtired and then you're just like, it sucks.
Yeah. You have to optimize at every level. And that optimization changes at each level that you pass.
Yeah.
And so that's definitely the big one. And, we do this for, again, post-production, when we're going through project, every level. You just need to constantly be asking yourself. So leads into lesson number 5, which is getting extremely uncomfortable and learning the skills that you're avoiding. And so, we had a few stories like this too, as well. It's like, in the beginning, we wanted to just continue taking on producing jobs and roles ourselves because we would just self-produce everything. We didn't really know what that role was.
Yep.
And so we just kept doing it, and we were scared to like pass it off because that was uncomfortable to us. We're like, how can we bring someone in? They take 10% of the budget. We don't even have that much budget.
Yeah.
And now we can't even, really, let's just take it on ourselves. That's it. Leave it at that. And we kept doing that over and over and over and over again. And it kind of goes to the last point, right? Where it's like the thing that's often holding you back, the thing that's super uncomfortable that you don't want to learn, finances or, learning new skills or whatever it is, like that's usually the thing that's stopping your business from getting to that next stage because you just don't give yourself that trust and that leverage to like do more.
Yeah. I feel like the most successful things or the successful people in the world do stuff that they don't enjoy. That's just like number one. And for me, I figure out what works best for like my schedule and how my creative mind works. And this will just take time for yourself. All the unpleasant stuff that I don't want to do, I do it in the morning. Yeah. Right? As soon as I get to my desk, I answer emails or I talk to people in terms of like, you even know best. I don't like talking to people, right? I just die. That's not comfortable for me. And it's just like when it comes to all just those things, you have to do them. Like, I know that like this creative world is very fun. It's very rewarding. It's very fulfilling. But if you're going to run a business, you have to have that and switch that business mindset. Yeah. Right. And then especially when now, if I talk to myself as a cinematographer, I obviously love the technical aspects of what it means to be a director of photography, learning how to light things, learning camera movements, geeking out about camera gear. I absolutely love that. What I didn't love, but I would say that was more harder for me to do was pre-production. Actually make an actionable plan and then make that plan presentable. Yeah. I feel like that's what I struggled with the most because I was like sitting at my desk for hours or days on hand, just being like, how do I communicate my ideas on paper? You know what I mean? Yeah. And then like, how do I align and talk to people in terms of being a team leader? And these are skills that I had to learn as I go, but I had to learn them by doing the things that were very uncomfortable for me, right? Yeah. I'm very to myself. I'm very like to know about everything and just think I can do it on myself. But once I had that mindset change of being like, hey, I'm hiring expertise in all these different fields when it comes to a grip, gaffer, I don't need to babysit that, right? I'm going to trust these people to do their job because they know more than me. And once I started doing that and then started working on the things that were more uncomfortable for me, as in like operating as a business, operating as a team leader, that's when kind of everything changed. You have to work on the skills that you're not necessarily good at, that make you feel uncomfortable, and that are, deep down inside that you're going to benefit from this. The business is going to benefit from this. I'm going to benefit from this.
Yeah. It's also funny too to think about now because like that's your whole role. And you're like, I can't actually lead a team without these base skills that, you just had to get over in the beginning. But now you're like, it's like second nature and you could just run a production, no problem.
Yeah, because even when it comes to like being on production and being on set, I'm a very different person than to where I am right now, right? And it's just like switching that mindset to say like, hey, I'm a team leader at this moment. I need to communicate to people properly, and I just don't need to have my hands on and doing everything, right? I need to be a leader in that point, and that's just what I had to learn naturally.
Yeah, I think there's something to say also from this is that we always talk about like the who, not how. When I say getting uncomfortable learning the right skills, it's learning the right skills.
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
And so for me, it was like, I need to actually learn how to speak to people and lead a project and lead like, talent on set and learn how to like communicate with talent and client and all that stuff. Me learning how to do finances necessarily is not the right skill for me to learn, because I should know more so like on a top level, much like you need to learn certain levels at the top level. And then you're like, I don't really need to deep dive that much more
into
because it's not really helping it's not really servicing what we're trying to push forward.
Yeah. It's not benefiting you of what you actually are doing, not necessarily want to do, but are doing.
Yeah. And so I think also in those beginning stages, it's finding the right things to spend your time on. And then doubling down on the stuff that works, right? Mm-hmm. Because oftentimes too is like you're labeled a filmmaker or videographer in the beginning, and I always ask people too. I'm like, what do you actually like? Do you like creating the ideas, the big vision, and making it happen and leading it from that end, or do you like doing that through being behind a camera?
Yeah.
And being very technical and being very like driven around like how the image looks. Like in most cases, yes, I care about how the image looks because ultimately it's the same idea there. But it's like, what's the path that you want to take? Do you want to be leading and creating director's treatments? Again, a little bit more advanced.
Of course.
But on your end, it's like, do you really want to make a director's treatment and sell that project? Again, you probably said earlier, you don't really like talking to people that much to like really sell and put on a big smile to like really get this idea going. You'd rather just be like, hey, here's the project. Can you make it happen? You're like, that's my sweet spot.
Yeah. It's just like, when you said that, I'm like, I could sell if I really wanted to. And it's just like not my strong suit. But when you said of like, hey, here's this project, here's how you can execute it, sell me how you can execute it. That I can do. Yeah. Right. But the soft skills of like talking to it and having that salesperson voice and, really taking my technical knowledge and not necessarily dumbing down, because I really hate that term, but applying it to the right audience. Yeah. If I'm talking to a client, I'm not going to be talking about like the lights that we're going to be using, but I'm like, oh, here's the approach of what we're going to do. Yeah. Right.
I'll be very straightforward. When I started holding a camera back then, none of my shots were in focus. And it was like a bad time. And that was very quickly a moment for me to be like, I'm actually not meant to be behind this camera. Mm-hmm. I was just so unsure of like, do I change the focus now? Like as things were happening. And then very quickly, I'm like, I need to move away from this spot. Kind of like, there's the whole self-awareness thing of like, what makes you uncomfortable versus like, okay.
What do I need to improve?
What do I need to actually improve?
Yeah. What do I need to like, what makes me comfortable and something I know I can confidently execute on. Yeah. And then the uncomfortable things of that to improve that. Yeah. There's a big difference between those two things.
Yeah.
Right?
We always talk about like being more competent and doing things more often. You get the evidence in yourself of like, oh wait, I actually can do this. Yeah. And that's what builds this confidence level that actually pushes you forward in the future. And so, but the confidence only happens when you just do stuff so many times that there's no guesswork anymore. Nope. You're like, I've done this recap video. I'm sure like a lot of you guys do. You could pull up to a recap video and be like, I can knock this out of the park.
I need this, and this, and this. I'm not going to overshoot because like that's the same thing over time.
Yeah. And it's the same thing for commercial work. When we first started, no clue. We were just shooting stuff and we were finally starting to get to that place, but we probably weren't that comfortable or confident. We were really just winging a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then to a place where now we're like, okay, we know what skills and steps we need to do to build that confidence before a project. And so that's the big thing. It's just getting very uncomfortable. Number 6 leads perfectly in from the last one is becoming the specialist, not the generalist. And I think the easiest concept that we hear all the time here is you have a brain tumor. Would you rather go to a brain specialist that all they do is neuroscience, whatever, I don't even think it's the right word, but all they do is brain surgery, or would you go to a general doctor? And how much more would you pay to make sure that you got the brain surgeon, right? And so really it's the same concept that translates over to filmmaking. Is like, do you want the person that all they do is commercial work? Or do you want, like Zach was saying earlier, a commercial filmmaker or DP to shoot your narrative piece that's meant to be shot completely different? You always want to get closer, and as a client too, in their perspective, you always want to go to the person that you know can execute, is credible, has done that thing over and over and over again. So, when it comes to Zach's style now, he has a style, like people want that thing, right? And so it's much easier when you start to grow yourself, and in the beginning, there's no other option but to do a lot of things. Especially your early spec work. You kind of just have to do everything.
Another common saying for that would be jack of all trades and master of none. And you don't want to be considered a jack of all trades. I remember at the beginning, I saw it as like a compliment of like, oh, I could execute anything, but it's not necessarily, because I probably could execute everything at maybe 50% of what the actual final product is, what it is, right? And then that's when you start to get scatterbrained in terms of like everything starts to mesh together. And if I was really like commercial work and that's what I was aligning with, and I was asking you to shoot a narrative, it would look like a commercial.
Yeah.
And then it would be like,
which has happened before.
before.
And we took you off that project because we're like, oh, okay, this is not really feeling the way. And like, but that's part of the game, right? And it's like you become so in tune with one style and one approach that we shouldn't take you away from that, because that's your sweet spot, right? Like that's how you have built that style and that look. And so when we ask you questions about that thing, and we want it to operate the way you do it, we're like, oh, cool. We know Zach can do that because he's done it so many times.
Even when we're supposed to do narrative or documentary work now, I feel like I still struggle with that. And I've learned I have to take a step back, right? And then I'll lean on somebody who is more competent and who is more like an expertise in that realm, which is Justin. And then I'll ask him questions like, how did you know to shoot that?
Yeah.
Like, this scene, this everything that you did here, how did you know to ask those questions?
And then Justin drops
and then I just
felt it. Yeah.
I just felt it. I'm like, I just get so not frustrated now, but I would get so frustrated of like, but why? But then he would come to me with the commercial stuff. He's like, yo, like, how did you achieve that sick camera movement? He's like, I know it applies to nothing when I'm like, oh, I just did this. It was like, because it felt right. He's like, why did you push them in there instead of pulling out? I'm like, oh, just because of this and this and this and what the brand wanted. Of like commercial is like very much intentional, while documentary or like narrative filmmaking is more feel.
Yeah.
Right. I just feel when a commercial is right, and he just feels when a documentary right, and that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that's totally okay. When you start off as a videographer or video professional, you're going to be a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. And that is going to be more of like you're running a business, But when it comes to cinematography and even directing in these specific niche roles, you have to be so much more intentional, and you have to pick a lane, niche down to it. Even if you don't like it, you got to switch.
Yeah.
You got to switch back and forth and see what you really like and really get into that. Because when I first started, I tried everything, right? And I found out I really like making things look cool.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, I can't necessarily really pull emotions out of things unless I'm asked specifically to do things. But that is really hard for me to do. I can just really focus on the visuals. I can align with the director and say like, hey, they really want this for this commercial look. And I'm like, easy peasy.
Yeah.
But if you ask me to ask a question about this documentary or like get this emotional tone, I'll be like, that ain't me, chief.
Yeah. I think that's a cool way to think about it too, is like when I first met Justin, same thing. He was always been the emotional kind of narrative person. And then the deeper you continue going down that path, it kind of locks you in there, right?
Yep.
And a lot of people right now in your early stages of careers, the work that you're getting forces you into the lane.
Yep.
And then suddenly people just keep hiring you for this one thing, and you're like, oh no, I don't want to be the car guy. Like, I need to transition out of this as soon as possible. The cool thing is that look how quickly Zach was able to do that if you're just intentional with your time. And I think a lot of people get stuck in that stage where you're like, I'll get to it eventually. Like, when I do a few more projects, I'll switch over to doing more spec work. And then guess what happens? It's just like it never happens, right?
Yeah.
Or, the cases where like you start to, you do a bunch of these types of jobs and you're like, I think if I just keep doing this, someone will give me this nicer, better job down the line.
Yeah. And then when it comes to even what you said about like my journey and everything like that, if I think about that car section that I was in my life, I was doing it all the time and I enjoyed it, but I'm like, I need more. And then that's when, you pushed me to make my first spec. And then that's what I started to do because it was A, uncomfortable, B, hard, C, it sucked.
Yeah. But it was your style. Like you started to like try things.
Yeah, I tried to try it. I adapted.
Style,
I adapted my style to something like that. And like, if I didn't make that first jump with all that resistance and everything like that, I was more fulfilled from that project than any cool car video of like a literally one of one kit that was found in Canada or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it meant something to me.
Yeah. Yeah. This is something that we've come across frequently for ourselves too.
Yeah.
Is like even us doing so much run specific stuff in the beginning because I was so into it and I was constantly pushing these guys into it. It's still a large part of our business.
It's a huge part.
And it still shows up in that sense.
Yeah.
And it's like whenever we want to make a decision to make a pivot or move into a different space, it's like, it's really up to you. You can make that stuff happen at like the snap of a finger. It is just having sometimes that path and knowing that you can actually do it is really the thing. And then like not quitting on it.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Even if we wanted to pivot right now and only do branded content reels for products.
We could do this tomorrow. Yeah.
We have all the equipment, all the means, all the systems in place. We would just start and realign that tomorrow. It wouldn't be easy and it would take time, but that time span would be so much smaller just because we would just niche down, pump all that out, and then talk to the right people, and that would be it.
Yeah. And like we've simplified this down in such a simple way, but it really does, it's coming from a place of confidence that we want everyone to build into, that you can literally just change your career direction whenever you want. But it's also going through these stages that we've kind of gone through and these systems and getting over these humps of like, you need to just trust yourself, right? Like, you want to do more things. You want to do better. You probably didn't sign up for filmmaking or pick up a camera because you wanted to shoot every, recap video out there. Like I'm sure you had more purpose than that. And we always like to be those people that can help you transition because we were those people when like a long time ago. And we wish there was some form of like direction on like, don't waste all your time doing that. Like we did a lot of wasted time and energy and money. But all turned into obviously things that we've learned from, but at the same time, there's always a path forward. So that leads into the next one, which is learning to build a predictable revenue strategy through positioning. So when we were chasing $500 projects, people wouldn't find us. We had no strategy to actually get our work out there, to brand ourselves. And I think in the beginning too, there's a lot of conversation about like, I'm just going to grind in the darkness. And then the problem is in this industry, your whole job is to do the opposite.
Put yourself out there,
create advertisements for people to put themselves out there. And so really the biggest shift that it came for us, it was how do we, again, reverse engineer what's currently working out there and play the game. Right. I think a lot of people are scared to play the game a little bit, which is putting yourself out there. We had to make these strategic decisions to be like, okay, for us to get work, we need to actually show up in the right places. We need, like when we post stuff, it's like, hey, everyone tag each other. It's like when we go shoot our spec projects, when we shoot our real projects, it's like BTS photos, BTS videos, any way we can play to take and give ourselves more opportunities to talk about the work that we do, which is why we started a YouTube channel. And people don't realize like the YouTube channel has also brought us in work as well, right? It's like, it's a never ending cycle of how you put yourself out there, how much confidence you can build to position yourself properly, right?
When we talk about like even the marketing side of our business and talk about one thing specifically, to give you guys a really good example, is Instagram. Obviously, when we put projects out, it was you posting it, me posting it, Adrian, Justin. That was it.
Yeah.
We're like, how can we centralize this and put it behind some sort of brand identity? And that was the play, but we didn't really do that at first. We kind of just started posting whatever, like literally random BTS of a camera or this certain thing. We didn't have any direction of like what it was because we didn't have anything to really strategize off that. We didn't really think about what the thing is that we wanted to do. And then we started looking at very professional production companies and be like, oh, this is how they're positioning themselves. And then we started doing that. And then a lot of people started taking us much more seriously.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like even at that point where we were constantly releasing projects on Instagram, like at that professional level, like our Instagram account really took off.
Yeah, the big thing too is when you are able to show up in the right places, you kind of do the 3 C's, which is like capabilities, right? Like you're capable of doing the work, you're consistent, so you show up all the time, you're top of mind. And at the end of the day too is like credibility, right? You build credibility for yourself, for the other people than how they see you. Like you were saying earlier, the first impression is so huge.
Huge.
The second someone lands on our main page and they see that we care about our page and how we brand and position ourselves, it adds a little tick on their mark to be like, okay,
This looks cool.
they're not like 4 dudes that just are figuring stuff out. It feels much more legitimate. And so it's nice when you kind of see the flip side of it. And when people start to talk about it, it's like, oh yeah, the work that you guys have been putting out, how you position yourself, like all these things really do add value to how people see us and perceive us. And ultimately it leads to trust, right? And so if people can trust us enough and we have enough positive markers on our end, people will hire you. People will hire you guys, right? And so it's not to say you have to like reshift your entire systems to follow exactly how we do it. It's just more so thinking about this stuff throughout every process you do.
Yeah, 100%. And to just put it in something like very simple, if like I'm hiring somebody to do a job, I'm going to hire somebody that cares about themselves and their business and like puts themselves forward in the best light possible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That makes themselves presentable in terms of what they're actually selling.
Yeah. So there's like this big triangle here. It's like we do spec work to build credibility for ourselves, but also for the confidence for ourselves. So we know how to actually execute on these projects. And then we post this stuff because it gives us, it shows credibility, it shows consistency that we're constantly working. But also at the same time, it's like, are these guys capable of doing work at a certain level? Because it's that level that, they're trying to spend money on, right?
Yeah.
Like, you want to find the people that you can trust. And we always like to flip this kind of script here. It's like, imagine you're the client, you have $50,000 for a campaign. Do I want to work with someone that's completely fresh or someone that's like has a bunch of campaigns? They work with big brands, agencies, like, cool. They have the base barometer of like, I can trust these people. And then like, what's your sauce on top that actually makes them pick you? That's like the overall kind of strategy here. Think of this on the simpler scale. You're in the $2,500 range. You need to be working often, showing that you're improving, and like almost sometimes that's all you need to continue just like getting jobs in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then as you start to build into more spec work and like be intentional with how you operate with that, then suddenly your value goes up and then you are open up to a whole new network, right? A little bit more agency work maybe in the beginning or direct to brand. And so these are just like the simple things you got to do. You keep in mind, if you're just doing work, never posting it, don't show up anywhere online, don't care about your presence, you can expect no one to trust you.
Yeah.
So lesson number 8 is knowing your numbers, right? So you cannot scale what you do not measure. And so in the beginning, much like anyone else, we didn't have much systems. And so the way we were tracking our projects were like, okay, cool, this is our total budget. And then we would just, as pricing and stuff came in, we would just put it into our little Excel sheet. And then by the end of the project, we'd be like, whoa, we spent $4,000 more than the project actually paid us. And it was bad because we were working from the wrong angle. Mm-hmm. We used to do it, and don't follow this. We used to do this, in a way where we would spend whatever, and then we would just split the whatever's remaining.
Yeah.
And it meant that we had no forethought like of anything coming into the project. We had no concept of like how much we were going to pay ourselves, how much we were going to pay crew, what like the cost of food. We would never charge cost of food. Like we weren't going to eat while these projects were going on. And so I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts about this one, but
yeah, there's a lot that goes into just knowing numbers and knowing how much things cost. And the more important thing is like how you communicate that to a client. Because if you communicate that to somebody of like, yeah, you need to feed people on set, they're going to be like, what? You know what I mean? Like that concept like baffles some people sometimes. So when you're pricing out work, when you're trying to make a sustainable business, there's multiple things that you can do. And I feel like where I can start is on that last point of you saying like, yeah, at the end, we just kind of split it 4 ways. And that's the wrong thing to do. Obviously, there's room that you have to pay yourself as a video professional in the work you're doing, but you also have to see how you can move the business forward. Like how much money is going to sit in that business so you can invest in things. You have cash flow throughout things to just pay for your overhead of what it costs to run your business. And then when it comes to actually pricing out a project, like, are we talking about like pricing, budgeting, or just
the
like
whole thing? Numbers are so important because just because you land a $2,500 campaign or project doesn't mean you can just go and spend $2,500, which is kind of how we used to think about stuff in the past.
Yeah, we would land a project and be like, okay, great. This
How can we spend
this is going to fund this because we need this to move the business forward. And we're like, now looking back on that is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
Let's just really break down of what this project is and how we can execute it. And even if it's feasible for us to something to do.
Yeah. And so in the beginning too, you take on any job and then the money is not really the important thing.
It's always a forethought.
Yeah. You're just like, cool, there's money involved. Like, and then you end up doing the project. The scale is much higher than you thought. There's crazy scope creep. And now you're like 4 or 5 weeks into a project. That should have been a 1-day shoot, 1-day edit. And you're like, wait, the money discrepancy here doesn't even work. And so that's like on a small scale, what happens in the beginning. On a larger scale too, a lot of times as you start to scale up into bigger projects, you start budgeting projects out and all you write is like, the idea here is you want to make X amount of dollars. So say you're like, I want to make $2,500 for this project. And you roughly estimate in your head, it's going to cost $5,000. So you're like, it's $7,500. And then the tagline beside it goes video production services. No, and we used to just throw these like, we used to send invoices as quotes.
Yeah. And it would be like one line item and you can't do that. Like now when we send out a quote, it's probably like, I've seen the budget templates. They're like probably 5 pages long.
5 pages long. You have like a work back schedule. You have full transparency. And so the bigger thing here is transparency. In the beginning, you feel like, oh, I don't need to show a client what I'm doing.
To break down all this.
Yeah, because also you don't even know the prices. So then you're just like, how much is gear supposed to be? I'm just using my own gear, so I'm not going to budget that in. You have to do it all, right? You have to have full visibility on both ends. And so whenever we go into projects now, it's like we know exactly what numbers are showing up, who's getting paid what. So there's no surprises. No. Right? There should be no overages in that sense because everything you're spending is to maximize on this campaign and project. But in the beginning, it was like we just did it completely opposite. Yeah. We just made up a random number.
And I feel like looking back on this now, it's pretty obvious. Like that was pretty stupid what we did. Yeah. And I feel like talking about it now, we kind of feel like idiots.
Oh yeah, for sure.
100%, right? And
it held us back for so long.
It held us back for so long. So the main thing here that I feel like that we have to do in terms of steps is first, not before you even get to the numbers, you have to understand what the scope of the project is and not just be hit blindsided by this like flashy number of like, for example, $2,500 that we're talking about. Like that is a large sum of money when we actually talk about it. Yeah. But when we talk about clients and everything like that, like video production is expensive.
Yeah.
Any type of production is very expensive. So first, don't get like pigeonholed in terms of what the scope of the project is, deliverables, and like iron out all those details first with the client so you can provide a proper estimate.
Yeah.
I feel like in the past, I made the mistake of so many times of like, well, what's your budget? Well, what's your rate? And I'm like,
here's my number.
And it never ever works out well. There's probably the 1% chance it does because the scope of the project was very small, but usually there's just a huge disconnect at that level between you yourself as a professional and the services you're offering to that client specifically. Yeah. Right? So you have to kind of put it in place and guide that conversation of what that looks like. And then if you show up professionally of like absolutely splitting down of what your cost of what the video production looks like, they will take you a lot more seriously. And that's when you can start actually getting and moving towards those bigger budgets. Yeah. Because this person yourself is thinking about everything.
Yeah. Right? And so you guys got to think about this too. Zach looks better and more competent if he's asking the right questions, if he's sending the right numbers, he's breaking it down, he knows everything top to bottom. That actually gives the client much more confidence than someone that just says, here's this bulk number.
Yeah, here like, oh, thanks for sending this through. This is going to cost $10,000. Or in this case, like $2,500. Then they're going to be like,
but you didn't ask me any questions.
Yeah, you're like, no, you need to hop on a discovery call that says
Yeah.
like, hey, what do you want? What's your market? What are you doing with this? What does this look like? Do you have any assets that you can leverage in terms of like location or stuff like that? Obviously, these are super
Yeah.
easy questions that we know now, but there's a whole list of things that you have like a client intake form.
Yeah.
That
And we've
you,
actually built this, right? This is our client brief checklist that we've built, and it's free online, guys, that you can download. And it's just getting the full scope, right? So many people, and like even us before, we never even took into account stuff like licensing.
Yep.
What's the deliverables? Like, are deliverables tell you, or can you even do the project, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you even have timeline for this? Do you realize that they have 45 deliverables and you're like, I don't even know how to output that much,
and
right?
they need it in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, these are all numbers that need to be added into an equation
Yep.
to see if it's actually feasible or not. And so like we have calls with our students all the time about this because a huge number falls on your shoulders first, and you're like, I'm instantly gonna take this no matter
Because
what.
I need the money.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of money, and I do not want to miss out on that.
Yeah. And it's this roller coaster, right? So like people don't realize it's like, this is why freelancing is the hardest thing, because there's this roller coaster of emotion. Because when you're at your lowest and you're down or whatever it is, you haven't done projects in a while, any form of number that gets sprinkled in front of you is like, you're like, I need that. Like you're just
Give me that.
Yeah, give me that. Let me catch that carrot, right? It's like dangling in front of your head. And then you'll bow down and do whatever you can. You won't ask the right questions. You're clouded in terms of your vision because you're like, whoa, that's huge. Like our first 50K number, we were like, doesn't matter. Let's just
Yeah, we
figure
just
it
have
out.
to get it done.
Yeah, but then sometimes you're like, wait, we weren't even capable of doing it. We weren't ready for it. It also wasn't a good campaign probably. And so it's like, don't get your hopes up, because that's what is, it's always a leverage game, right? Someone opens up an email, sends it to you. They're like, hey, campaign, blah, 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 big number. It's like, oh my God. In that instance, that client has all the leverage because you're sitting there like, I'm going to be rich. Suddenly I'll do anything they need me to do to land this client. And then the second you start asking questions, asking the right questions in the client brief checklist, you start to realize, and once you get your answers back, you're like, oh wait, this doesn't make sense. Like they want me to do 45 hero videos for $10,000, and this just isn't going to work out.
Yeah, I'm going to be doing this project for like 4 months.
Yeah,
and
I'm
then
working full time.
Then I'm going to miss their deliverables. They're going to be upset with me. Then this is going to be a terrible process where I potentially lose money, lose a client.
Yeah.
Because you didn't manage those expectations, because you didn't know the numbers, because you didn't know the scope of the project.
Yeah. Exactly. So this is the importance of knowing your numbers. It gives you leverage to know when to say yes, when to say no. And also it shows you how to actually build your business outside of that,
Yeah.
right? Like how do you actually, have margins? You guys got to figure out what margins are. Revenue is not that great when you're not making any money on top of a project. And then knowing that, you don't have to buy gear all the time. Like all these little small things that are holding you guys back right now are the same things that held us back. And we just want you to get past those stages faster.
Of course.
So be a little bit more conscious with your numbers. Don't let numbers shake you, right? But ultimately, we're going to get into lesson number 9, which is execute when it matters most, right? Which is through deliberate practice. And so, I'm going to go back to my golf analogy here. In golf, when you're playing a round, you try not to change anything because the time to practice was last week. You know what I mean? And when you're trying to do things fresh and new completely, and you haven't practiced it, you're just going to go fail. And so how this translates over to filmmaking is you don't go onto a 100K project and start trying new stuff on the day of. Right? Like when we go into campaigns and there's a completely new setup, there's a completely new rig that Zach hasn't tested before, there's no way Zach is going to go on set. I mean, we used to do this where we're just like, we'll figure it out on set. And then we would be stressed. We'd be like hours behind schedule and we'd be like, that was a bad move.
I feel like I can talk about this, especially when it comes to cinematography, because there are so many skills under the branch of cinematography. Like how to get specific camera movements, how to light specific situations, how to make the most out of a small room, yada, yada, yada. It goes on and on and on. And the biggest thing that I struggled with the most was like, how do you light something to make it look dark?
Yeah.
Right? How do you light something with low exposure and you don't end up with noise all over your image? Or a big thing that I'll talk about after is like rigs and how to get specific shots. And the thing that I did was like, when I'm doing these projects and I'm getting these nighttime shots or I'm getting these dark and moody shots, everything's like crushed and like there's noise all over the image. I'll bring it into after and I'm like, this was supposed to be like a project that we're super proud of, and it looks like grainy everywhere.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, how do I expose properly? And that's when I started taking lessons in terms of just shooting stuff on my own at my parents' house, just shooting nighttime interiors. I feel like that's the biggest thing you can learn when it comes to exposing things properly. And then knowing with working with a proper colorist or just knowing the post-production process that you can bring a lot of things back in terms of bringing everything down. You can't bring it up. You only can bring it down. So you kind of have to expose properly with something that doesn't look nighttime when you're actually shooting it, but then expose it down in post. And that meant like, I need custom LUTs for these nighttime interiors. So when the director looks at the thing, he's like, feels a little lit. Then I'm just put on an output LUT that takes everything down to or one stops, and they're like, this is what I'm going for. But on my monitor, I'm properly exposed. But if I didn't do that, and I didn't practice, and I didn't build those LUTs in the back end, I wouldn't know what to do on set. And that goes perfectly going into rigs. And I feel like our biggest advantage when it came to figuring out how to get commercial shots is that we just tested them on our own. And it was with like a phone, an FX3, or just building specific rigs when we had whatever we had at our disposal. Obviously, we couldn't even, there was a time where we didn't even have a Dana Dolly in-house, or we didn't have a bunch of things. We just had a bunch of pieces to execute on the specific rig shots. And then that's where we kind of learned the most and where it mattered the most, because on the day I would already have everything pre-built, and it would save us, you could even say like an hour or two, because I would do it in 5 minutes because I knew everything where it needed to go.
Yeah. It leads perfectly into the idea of previs as well.
Yeah.
It's like our ability to see things beforehand. We're all creatives, but some people just function differently, and oftentimes you need to see what works to actually know whether it's working or not. And for the longest time, we just kind of just went there and we just winged it, winged it,
whatever.
Yeah, we did that, and it didn't work, right? We bring it out back into post, and then be like,
we needed that shot to connect these two shots.
Yeah, and we could have solved this so much like earlier if we just had put in the time, but this is ultimately why we do spec jobs, right? Technical specs, which are things where we just need to go out there and try things, try certain shots, blocking, whatever it is, turn it into something else that's like functioning. Like those always level up into the bigger campaigns, right? Like the first spec that me and Justin ever did was like the one with like one of our friends. He was a runner. That campaign over the years has become the on the fly version, right? And it's like all these little run things that we've learned and tested, and slow-mo. Like we didn't just try the Ember on that project for the first time. We had like tested some form of variation of a slow-mo on another camera. Or when we had to not use the Ember for our final shots, which was like the biggest shot, like we had already tested other things as backups.
And then, sorry to cut you off, but to even talk about that example when everything went wrong, because we knew that we could rely on a camera that on the FX3 that shot 240 frames per second at 1080. We're like, we've tested enough. It's good enough. We can get away with it.
Yeah.
But if we didn't know that, we're like, no, we had options. The shot's not going to make it. And it was one of the most important shots of the piece.
Yeah. It's the whole thing.
Yeah, it is the whole thing.
It's the whole thing. So it's all to say, when you guys, have gone through all your projects, and even as you guys are doing a million recaps, it's like the stuff that you learn through the skills and doing it over and over again will translate over to the bigger lessons, which is, okay, cool. I just got to do more in a different space now, practice and get over these like small kind of hiccups that you might be dealing with. Anytime there's anxiety around your life, around a project, whatever it is, like you can usually find the solution, which is doing more work and figuring it out earlier.
Practice makes perfect.
Practice makes perfect. And more importantly, perfect practice makes perfect, because you could be practicing bad techniques over and over and over again. Like Zach was saying, it's like we could have just kept trying to do low light stuff all the time and it would look so bad. But then he went and figured out the right way to do it. And now when we do it, it's so easy because he's
Yeah.
already practiced the right and correct way to do it.
Yeah, because you would keep guessing on each time and then bring it back. But in a situation that's controlled, I could shoot it at so many different exposures and then bring those up back on post and then see what actually worked.
Yeah.
Right? Because then there's a lot of the times on set where you'd be like, or any director would be like, oh, that feels a little lit. And I'm like, trust me.
Yeah, we're good. That's usually me. So that is actually the conversation we have all the time. Let's get into the final lesson, which I think is one of the biggest ones that holds back almost everyone in some time or space, is acting like $100,000 filmmaker before you have the proof for it, right? And this is more of like an internal belief that you kind of have to get over, is that you can't keep thinking that you're going to be stuck somewhere, or I'm never going to get past this stage, whatever it is. This is a little bit more like internal philosophical stuff. I'm sorry, guys. But
Mindset.
really, this is the big one. Because even when when I almost quit, at that point, I still knew I could have made it to that place. I just need to find a better system. And so I locked in and tried to find, a Justin and you and Adrian to like get to that place. And every time we've gone to like some form of low point or place where we're like, oh, okay, we have to figure out something new here. It wasn't like, I'm just going to quit. It's more like, oh, we're going to get there. We're always going to figure this out. And you need to just assume that you're going to be able to create these projects and have the confidence. And the only difference and things that are holding you back is like your ability to think you can do that. Because when you think it, you can get there. And that's the best part about the mind, is like, you just have to think about it.
Hey, have you ever felt stuck as a videographer and want to push past the $2,500 to $5,000 projects and really start creating work that feels a lot more intentional? I feel like we did this with our business constantly with making spec work. And this is one of the most important things that we did that propelled ourselves as a production company. And that's why we created Cinematic Portfolio Mastery. This is a cohort-style course where we take you through the entire process on how to make a spec commercial for a whole 6 weeks. By the end of this 6 weeks, you will have a spec project for yourself that you can start marketing and push yourself where exactly you want to go in your filmmaking career. Check out the link in the description below to join the wait list now. Yeah, I know it sounds cheesy, but Jason is completely right, and it applies to everything. And then we talk about my journey specifically. When I went full-time into being into video production, I was at a major crossroads. Not even like a crossroads of going like two ways. It was like three directions. I was doing my master's, and I could have done and pursued a PhD and go into teaching and everything that I loved, or I could have worked back in engineering, or I could really advance my video business and see what that looked like. And that was the point where I kind of made my first spec, and then I was kind of unsure because I wasn't really feeling the drive to do that anymore. I wasn't getting that spark of what, like, that creativity of what you and Justin were really doing, right? And it's just like I could have easily fell back into engineering and wanted to pursue that path, which isn't a bad thing at all. But I really wanted to do filmmaking, and I'm like, I'm going to put my mindset towards this. I'm not going to have an ego towards anything, and I want to surround myself with people who I can learn from. And that's why in the first year that I worked together with you guys, I didn't hold a camera at all. I'm surrounded by people who have the same vision as me, the same drive, the same want, with different skills. How can I benefit everybody right now? And that was being a gaffer, which was applying my technical skills and of just learning things and applying it to lighting. And that's what like really leveled up our work and allowed us to get to a place in the span of a year.
Yeah.
Right.
Even a confidence level in yourself too, because you're like, okay, cool. I don't have to like stress about this stuff, right? That's kind of like the whole theme of this whole episode. Is like you learn the skills and you're like, I feel pretty good. I can actually level up to a DP now, and I don't feel like I'm learning all these different things by, out of nowhere.
But like, even when you say like, oh, I didn't have that mindset a step to say like, oh, I can level up to a DP now. It's just, guys, you guys saw it and you're like, yo, Zach, shoot this one. But I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, oh, really? You guys want me to DP this? And I was like, all right. I'm super uncomfortable because I knew the technical skills, but I didn't know how to communicate them properly. Right. That's what I lack confidence in, even though I did know how to communicate them because I was pretty good at talking to people and talking to people in terms of a technical level and explaining that, because when I was doing my master's, I was also a teacher's assistant, and that's what I really love to do.
Yeah.
Which is just not necessarily teach, but just communicate ideas. That is the essence of teaching, right? So yeah, it was very uncomfortable, but again, we're talking about mindset here and just like putting yourself in the box that you can achieve things and really achieve anything that you put your mind to.
Yeah. The cool thing with filmmaking in general is that the ideas that you have and the things that you want are the only thing that's holding us back is yourself, realistically. And oftentimes in the beginning, you kind of wait for permission. And either that's a permission to jump on set or try something new, or a permission to even like get out of your shell and like shoot stuff. Because sometimes people have a camera at home and they're like, I need something to exist for me to actually go and shoot it.
No, just film yourself.
Yeah. Go get uncomfortable. And I think this always loops back around. Like that was your story in the beginning. Like when I first put my bio as director, I was like, I'm just a videographer. Like, I'm not saying you guys have to fake it till you make it. It's the idea that I had the self-belief that I could become a director. And so I put it out there. And my next goal was to prove to myself and prove to the world and learn all the skills that I can actually do that. And so over time, like after our 5th project together, I'm like, okay, this is what directing is.
I can do it.
I could do this. And this is something that you learn, again, competence becomes confidence, right? And then that imposter syndrome that exists, whether you're trying to become a DP or trying to become a director, whatever it is, like that stuff slowly goes away the more you do things, because after a certain point, no one can look at your portfolio of your 20 projects that you've directed and tell you that you're not a director, right? You have physical proof, you have evidence that you are who you say you are, and you have the skills that you have. And so no one can ever take that stuff away from you. And you need to just be confident in yourself that you will get to that place. No one's going to call you out. No one cares. Realistically, everyone is too much into their own life to ever really judge you. And if they are, you're looking and surrounding yourself with the wrong people, right?
Yeah, and that's a big one too, because as soon as you start, like, I feel like I see this a lot on Instagram for like creators who are just like posting content about niches and stuff. We're not even talking about cinematography or education or anything like that. Their number one thing is just post it.
Yeah.
Don't care what anybody else thinks. If that's what you want, if that's your wheelhouse and that's what you want to do, you're going to find the community and people who support that as well. And then when this comes to cinematography and just putting yourself in that mindset, you just have to do it. It's going to be tough. It's going to take a while, but again, mindset is everything.
Yeah. So those are the 10 lessons that we've learned over the years, and we're hoping that you guys can instill this stuff earlier so you don't have to spend the 4 or 5 years of us spinning our wheels and trying to figure this stuff out, right? So really, at the end of the day, the difference between a filmmaker that sells a $2,500 project versus like a $100,000 project isn't that much, right? It's like learning a few skills, practicing, trusting yourself that you can get to that place. And over time, you just build enough of a network, you build enough of, a community around you, and you trust yourself that you have the skills because you've done them enough times. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, you pretty much said it perfectly.
Yeah.
Again, like we struggle with these things so much, and right now hindsight is 2020, which we can guys direct you and guide you in the right path of what you should actually be spending your time on. And that's like, I feel like the most important thing, because especially as running your own business, time, and when you're even running a life, time is the most valuable resource, and we don't want you guys to waste it.
Yeah. So that's this episode. If you guys are interested in learning directly how to actually create spec work the way that we've done it, that's actually allowed us to learn these skills and operate faster, as well as just give ourselves the confidence and to do spec work with intentionality. We also have Cinematic Portfolio Mastery, which is a cohort program that we run every few months. And so if you're interested in that, check out the waitlist in the comments below, as well as the description. And we hopefully see you guys there. And we'll see you in the next one. Peace.